today I am working on my Jinny Beyer Stellaris Month 4. It's already halfway to next month's clue and I'm just getting started on it. And we're having a cool front that came through, so it might be a wonderful time to go out on the front porch and sit in the rocker and do hand sewing while I just enjoy being able to be outside again. So I'm getting ready. I'm going to show you how I'm cutting out this month. It's a little tricky. Any of you, please, I just record my joy with doing these Jinny Beyer block of the month, or technique of the month as you want to call it. I do this just to record my joy, but the best instructions come from going to jinnybeyer.com, signing up for a free newsletter, and then you can get the monthly installments free. The pattern is free, and while you're there, look for one of her kits. She has 6 colorways this year, so look for one of the kits, because that way you know you'll get that Jinny Beyer magic. That thing she does, the quilter of light, I call her. So, and she has great templates, because you need a good amount of templates for this year. And when you finish this one, you can consider yourself an expert quilter. That's what I love about Jinny's patterns, because she explains them so well, and you can really boost your quilting skills by following her monthly instructions. And each month she puts out a video. I've got my laptop right here, and before I cut every section, I go back over her video just to make sure I'm doing it correctly. So I'm just sharing my joy and showing you little things that I do. But for the best instructions, sign up for her newsletter, get this pattern yourself, and watch Miss Jinny do it. It's like having your own private lesson with Jinny. You can't do better than that. So let's get busy with this Stellaris. I think we have a lot to do, and I'm going to try to do this month's selection by hand, like I've been doing most of this quilt, and I can't wait to get started. All right, let's go. All right, I'm cutting out the last of fabric 1. We're cutting into 3 1/4 inch by width of fabric strips. Now some people say, how do you cut 3 1/4? That's a tricky thing. So what I do is I pull out my June Taylor shape cut, this is shape cut plus, so it's very long and big. Alright, so I'm cutting out my last strip. Let me make sure I get it. I'm just making sure it's nice and square. And some people say, well, how do you use a shape cut ruler to cut that when it's 1/4 inch? Because the slots are every 1/2 inch. No worries. Because what you do is this has a marking. Do you see the dotted line right here? The dotted line is for the 1/4 cut mark. So if you put the 1/4 cut mark dotted line on the edge, then you're cutting in 1/4 inch from the edge of the measurement. So you're going to end up cutting on what says the 3 1/2 inch line, but since you've moved the ruler in 1/4 inch, it'll give you your 3 1/4. Makes cutting very, very easy. So I bring the ruler down here so I can get the cutter in, line it up on the dotted line that shows 1/4 inch, and then cut at 3 1/2. And then move it up, putting my dotted lines on the edge and cutting at 3 1/2. Okay, and here I go. And that's how I've already cut. Here are my other 3 1/4 inch strips. All right. So I'll put this here until I find out what I'm supposed to do with that next. Now, the other thing that I need to cut out with these, they wanted you to cut this on the cross grain. So remember, the cross grain goes from selvage to selvage. It's the horizontal, from selvage to selvage. This is the cross grain. The length grain, picture it coming off the bolt, that whole long piece, it runs the whole length. So I have one more of these to cut out. I needed just one more. And place the template on the cross grain. There was a selvage here and a selvage over here. Put it on the cross grain and run my tailor's chalk right around the edge of the fabric. Alright, and then just take my ruler and cutter, meeting them up. After you cut out your template eye, then you lay it on each piece and mark your dots. So you'll know on the wrong side of the fabric, mark your dots so you know where to stop and start. All right. Now that part is done. I need to lay these strips out because I'm going to cut a template from them. So I'm going to lay them out in layers of 2 at a time. I've got them all laid out in stacks of 2, nice and even. Now I get my very long template J. While I'm laying the template here, I'm going to mark the dots while it's right in place. And then draw the line with my tailor's chalk. Okay, then I move it to the next double strip, line it even, mark my dots, okay. And draw the end across. Okay, come back to this final one. Mark my dots. Okay. And then mark it with the tailor's chalk. Now I can come back and very carefully, so I don't cut the template, cut the end of the fabric. And this time for these, I'll just use the ruler. Lay it right up against that chalk line and cut. Lay it right up against the chalk line and cut. All right. So now I have this end. I'm going to turn these around this way so I can see. Okay, we've got the end matched up. So I'm going to come along here and do the same thing again. I'm going to mark my dotted lines. Be careful that the fabric stays lined up correctly. So, okay. Dot here, dot here, dot there. Take the chalk and draw it across the end. And then I want to go ahead and carefully cut it without cutting my template. And I have now a pack of 2 J template J's. Alright, lay that up there. Do the same thing with this. Now, you might say, well, why do you bother to mark with tailor's chalk if you're just going to take the cutter? Because I can use the cutter to stay on the blue line, be less likely to cut my template. Alright, so now I'll get my scraps out of the way. And now I've got all 6 pieces. And I have found with Jinny, I do it just as she tells me because it really works. These are rather intricate patterns. And just by following the instructions, you can do quite a good job. Don't ever let your perceived ability stop you from doing a Jinny Beyer pattern, because they're written so beautifully. You will have no problems if you just follow the instruction. I'm marking these with J. So when it comes time to use that part, I will have it. Here are my marked I sections. So now I've got these marked as well. I followed Jinny's instructions on how to cut these miniature stripes. And last night I cut most of them out while sitting on the couch. Now, if you haven't been quilting a long time, then I might recommend that you sit at a table with a board, get your cutting. In fact, I'm going to show you by cutting them this way so that you can make sure you get them very straight. Since I'm going to be sewing by hand, I'm going to make sure that I sew from this side so I can tell how to leave that little bit of a black stripe that Jinny wants you to leave while you're sewing these. So it's okay, you know, as you can see, since I cut mine by hand, they're not perfect, but I know that since I'm going to be doing it by hand and from that side, that I'll make sure that my sewing line is very consistent. The seam allowance is 3/8 of an inch. So, and you notice I tore the first side. I didn't tear anymore after that. Because when you do tear the fabric, you'll get these little, where the fabric kind of pulls and so it leaves the undyed section showing. And that's fine for most of the time, but I didn't want to take a chance on messing up any of my fabric because none of the little pull marks go up close enough to the seam allowance I have to leave. But here's where I cut both sides, and I'm usually pretty good with my eye-hand coordination. I've been quilting long enough, but I thought today I would show you how most of you might want to do this. So what Jinny has said is she wants you to cut. You had to take off the first stripe because the first stripe was really, really close to the edge and you couldn't use that. So I took that off and discarded it. And then that leaves you 17 other stripes to do. So I'm going to lay my ruler so that I know it's right in the middle of this black stripe, because she wants you to leave 2 of these stripes and then cut it, then leave 2 stripes and then cut it right down the middle of the black, then 2 stripes, cut it down the middle. So that's what we're going to do. And as usual, I'm going to use my Martelli ergonomic rotary cutter It's the best thing I have found. I suffered terribly with carpal tunnel before I had my surgery about 6 years ago. And I have to tell you, this is a wonderful, wonderful cutter. And it allows me to cut while sitting down, which my back appreciates. I just wanted to show you too how beautiful this fabric is. The hand, which is the feel and the hang and the drape of the fabric, is beautiful. And the detail, the level of detail in the printing is amazing. Absolutely amazing. All right, so what I'm going to do, since I have this long fabric, I do not want to fold this because I want to make sure I get as accurate a cut as possible. So this is what I'm going to do. I lay the fabric here and I'm going to make all of my cuts halfway, then I'll pull the fabric up and finish them. So, all right, my next cut, I place my ruler, and you know what I find helpful is you want to make sure that you know easily and quickly where to place your ruler to get an accurate cut. So I'm going to take some of my painter's tape and I'm going to tape the exact middle of this so I know right where to put the ruler, because it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 eighths, so I want to go 3 eighths in. 1, 2, 3 eighths. So I'm going to want to line this up right here on 3 eighths. Let me get another piece to put it down here, and that way when I line it up I get the same cut each time. Alright, now I'll put this one 3 eighths. And as long, you do know that if you have two accurate points, you'll have a straight line. Okay? So I have 2 points to measure up with, and I just line the edge of the blue tape up with the edge of this next stripe, and that way when I make this cut, I know it's perfect, right where I want it. Alright, the next one now, I count over 2 stripes and place this right at the edge and make the next cut. Okay. Okay. Right at the edge. I'm finding it's easier to bring the cutter towards me. It works perfectly to run it right along the nice bright white selvage. Can't miss that one. Alright. Now I'll bring these pieces down and get ready to cut my next few. Now, I'm all for saving time, but it is important to cut this very accurately, and the only way to do it is painstakingly, one layer, one cut at a time. Okay. Okay, against the selvage and cut some more. I just wanted to show you something. When I was cutting this strip, my rotary cutter kind of moved over just a little bit. I'm not worried because I've got plenty enough left here to do the seam allowance. I will just adjust it when I go to sew it so that I still sew on the same place. So the seam allowance here might not be as wide as the rest of the strip. But I'm going to leave this little cut in place because this reminds me to take special care to continue sewing in the correct place, not just line up the edge. Never worry when something like this happens. You can fix anything. Alright, now I'm getting ready to cut the strips to length for the borders. So I don't want to get confused. I label everything. So what I did is I took an ink pen and wrote on masking tape, my favorite way to label things, inexpensive and quick. And then I'm going to line the tape up on the edge of the table here so that as I cut the pieces, I can then label them with this tape. Alright, so it says the first one, from each strips 1 and 2, it wants me to cut them 62 inches. So I'm going to put them together. Making sure they're nice and smooth so I can cut them at the same time. Alright, my cutting mat, this is a Quilter Select cutting mat. I love it. And so once I have these two strips together and even, I'm going to measure 62 inches. So first is 24, then another 24 equals 48. So right here is 48. And I have to go to 62. Well, 62 take away 48 equals 14. So now I'm going to put the 62 here and go up 14 inches. And then make my cut. And if you want to, measure twice, cut once. It works for home building, it works for quilting. Alright, so this is border number 1 long. So, put this here and put this piece of tape on it. So now I know it's border 1 long. These only need to be 36 inches. So I line them up here. 24 minus 36 minus 24 equals 12. So I just need these 12 inches. Okay. Fold these up and come here to border 1, the short piece. So border 1S for short. Take this, and these are to be, for border 3, 41. So 41 minus 24 is 17. So I'll bring this down here, right here. Come over here to 17. Place my ruler. And cut. Alright. Border 3, short. 73 minus 48. So I've got 24 and 24. And now I need 25. So I'm going to go here and then add 1 more inch. And I will cut it right here. Then my last tape for border 3, long. Okay, put that over here. I'm cutting fabric 2 now. And the first thing I'm going to cut is template F. And you see how you take your templates, you put them together on the matching line, and then I use clear cellophane tape to tape them together. Now, it says, this is something we need to remember for this time, it tells you which way to run your template. It says crosswise grain. Remember when I was telling you your crosswise grain runs horizontally between the selvages, and you see the selvage here? So, and I've got this folded so the pretty side is out, but the two selvages are together. This is the crosswise grain. This would be the lengthwise grain, because if you were to get the whole bolt of this fabric and lay it out, it would be long, long, long piece, and that would be the lengthwise. This is the crosswise grain. And this fabric has the most beautiful pattern on this. And this is where we're very lucky that Jinny Beyer pays attention to all of these little details. It's absolutely beautiful fabric. It looks like a lovely, light, wavy day on a lake. So anyway, I have to lay this crosswise and I have to cut 6. So I'm going to get my chalk and I'm going to trace and make sure now, don't always put it right on the bottom edge, because see, this piece is a little short on that side. See? It's not even. So it's better to waste a fraction of an inch of fabric down here than to line up this piece, cut it out, and have it too short. Then you've wasted all that you did cut out. Now here I can put the pattern piece right on the line of the former piece. And let's get template E, bring the fabric back out here, and it says use template E to cut 6 pieces with the grain line arrow running on the cross grain. So now I have got to be careful using this fabric so I have enough. No. Okay, so I'm wondering, can I, okay, 1, 2, 3, if I have one here, okay, oh, that's right, I used some of this for the other project. Woo! Alright. I think it's important to do them individually and make them fit. Okay. Come here. Wonder if I should do here. I'm trying to decide. Just keep it cross grain. Remember, in between the selvages, and here's the selvage. But I'm wondering if I should put this one here. Let me see what I can do. Right now, I'm just chalking them in, so let me make sure they'll fit. Don't make any mistakes on this fabric. Okay, let's see. Alright, I can line these right up. Okay, so that's 1, 2. Oh, I'm going to have plenty. The nice thing is when you get it and you make sure you're on the cross grain, you don't want it tilted, then you can just bump these right up against each other. Sometimes, you know, we always want to put it on a double fold. Sometimes we would waste too much fabric doing that. Okay. Let me see. Okay, I can put this one right here. So 1, 2, 3. Here will be number 4. So I have plenty. I'm doing just fine. But you see how I'm kind of taking advantage, too, of lines I've already drawn. Okay. Down here. So that's number 1, 2, 3, 4. So I just need 2 more. Let me see. How would I run this? You can spin them around, just don't flip it over. Let me see. I think if I run it this way, it's flipped around. It's not turned over. It's flipped around. Although this would be a great space. I can go up in there and use what would be kind of wasted fabric. So I'm going to pop up in here for this one because I don't like wasting fabric. That way I have less to put into a scrap pile. So I do it on my crosswise grain. Okay. Whoop. Alright, so then I just need 1 more. 1, 2, 3, 4. So, don't turn it over, just turn it around. And I'll put it right up against this one. That keeps me from having to do too many cuts. I like efficiency as long as I can get it to work with accuracy. I'm not always this accurate, but for Jinny Beyer, it's worth it. All right. By doing that laid open, I saved a bunch of fabric. All of this is now available for me to use for another project. Yay! It's much better, I believe, to be a little more frugal, and that way you get to, don't think of it as not spending or enjoying, thinking of being able to do more because you are frugal and careful. I'll never forget when my daughters were growing up, these white keds were all the fashion, and they wanted white keds. But I showed them that to go get an official pair of Keds, I could get them 3 pairs of shoes from Walmart for the same price as 1 pair of Keds. So what I did so that I could teach them, I let them decide. Okay, what do you want to do? Do you want a real pair of Keds or do you want 3 pairs of shoes? They learned very quickly which was the better option, especially since they grow so fast. They would grow out of them quickly, and fads don't last long. Alright, now I can put the tape on these, mark them with step E. It's going to be 14 by 25. Well, I can't do them this way because that won't be 25. I have to turn them this way. I love ripping fabric. Alright, so what I need to do is these triangles need to be 25 inches. So I put it 1 inch beyond here and cut it right here. Making sure I'm square along the fabric edge is along here and square by the ruler. This should be 25 inches. So now what I need to do, I need to cut it 14.5 inches this way. To make that easier, I'm going to fold it in half this way, and I'm going to cut it at 15 inches. That way I can true up my edges. So let me find 15 on this ruler. 15 is right here. There we go. Mark it. I'll get this fabric squared up on the board, the ruler squared up with a vertical line, then I can cut this. Alright, now let's see what I've got. Open this up, and 15 and 15. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to neaten up all my edges. Right here. This is what you have to do when your cutting mat isn't as big as what you're cutting. Marked it at 24. Now I come up and line the ruler with those 2 marks. Line the ruler and then go 1 inch beyond that. I can run the chalk down, and as you'll see, now I have a line to cut it so it's perfectly 25 inches. It's kind of fun. It's kind of like going back to high school, but this time you understand the math. So, you know, I've got a lot of life experience since I was in high school, and I could go back and do so much better. Alright, very good. Alright, so now I know that this triangle is a perfect 25 inches. Now what I have to do is make it a perfect 14.5 inches. So I'm going to fold it in half. And I've got this really pretty edge here. So this is going to serve as my good edge. Make sure all my edges are together. All the layers are the same length. 14 and a half. And I'm going to mark my fabric. Normally I wouldn't, but I want to make sure it's very accurate. Okay. 14 and 1/2 inches. Alright, and this just takes a little bit of time. Take your time and think about it. But there is a 14 and a half inch rectangle by 25. Now it wants me to cut on the diagonal. Alright, make 2 triangles. So what I'm going to do is sit here very carefully and finger press, hand press right on the line. This is cut on the diagonal. So making sure that both points on each diagonal corner are right in the middle. Then I'm just going to take and very gently pushing down make a fold line. I do not want to stretch it. I just want to push down gently. Now if you have a long enough ruler, which I don't, then you could make your marks. But okay, I took it to the ironing board and pressed it. And I'm not sure if you can see it, but it gave me a very crisp line. And in looking at it, it looks really good. Okay, so then I've put my ruler along the sharply pressed line. And then I just follow the ruler right on down. So now I should have 4 exact triangles. Here we go. Let's see. How does this look? That looks pretty darn good. Press them and there they are. I'm looking to decide which fabric to use. Do I use this long piece or do I use this? And let me tell you how I decide. This has got a fold right here. So when this opens out, it's double this. This is not a fold. So this is all this will ever be. That's the bigger that this will ever be. So I'm going to cut them out of this part because this is a lot more versatile. By the time I open this is going to be about 16 inches, and I like that. So let me go ahead and I think I can still use the blue. Okay. My edges are nice and crisp here, so I will just start this. Always make sure my edges are firmly together. 6. Remember, we're not turning it over. We're just spinning it around. And this shows a grain line. Actually, this is probably the lengthwise grain line, but it's not going to hurt to have this on the crosswise. The lengthwise grain line is the absolute most stable, but the crosswise is pretty stable itself. So there. Now when I cut these, since it's a double layer of fabric, I'll have the 6 I need. Tell you what, this has been a lot of cutting this month. I will be happy when it's all cut out and I'm sitting in my recliner with a nice glass of iced tea and ready to do some peaceful hand sewing. Yep, I think I'll be ready for that. It normally is not this much cutting, but this is a good amount. She kind of eased us into it this time, because the other months, you know, it's kind of slowly built. But I'm not going to complain. I'm so lucky to be able to make this. I love this. I put all of my scraps and leftovers because you never know when you'll need a piece or more. I like keeping everything together because if I do, it makes it so much easier to get stuff done. And I keep my binder so that I can put everything together. Keeping it together makes me more productive too. Now I have these, and I have to do some very specific cutting on these. From the first two strips, it says cut 36 inches. That's 36 inches. Okay, now I have these, and I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to put these aside for now with template K. I'll put these aside for now. It wants me to cut 12 template C's. I looked in my scraps and found these good sized pieces, so I'm going to use these first and then use my other strips. Don't forget, when you get ready to cut template C, don't forget to line up your pattern to make sure you get mirror cuts. So, for this dark fabric, I thought I would do best using white tailor's chalk. Whoops, let me try that again. So I've lined up. Both fabrics have to be lined up perfectly. All right. Then I'll mark the dots on these and then make 10 more. Okay, I'm getting ready to cut template C. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And then I have to mark my dots. So I'll mark my dots and then I'll be done with this. So now, part C, all marked and ready to go. Next ones, I'm going to use template G to cut. Definitely have to concentrate when you put these on. And once you get them lined up, then you're usually pretty good to go. So I'm going to make exact copies, meaning line up these little marks with the diamonds, just like I'm supposed to. I only need 6 pieces of this. Okay. Now, turn them over. Yes, I've got to mark the dots. I know this seems like a lot of work, but it'll save you. If I can save ripping out one seam, it is worth it. It is totally worth it to me. template D. Okay, so I just finished cutting out and marking from template D. So now I've marked this. I'll put that on the pile. With the remaining unused strips, they want me to cut out template A and template H. So I'm going to get ready to do that. And I gotta do them identical, so I'm going to mark the diamonds on each end so I know I'm identical. It will show. These are going to come together at junctures, and it will show. I just realized I need to turn the light on. Hold on. All right. Do template A. Okay, here's a mirror line, right, and it goes right through the widest part of the little diamond on the pattern, and then come here and mark the diamonds on this. And that way, wherever I place it, as long as this lines up with the pattern on the fabric, then I know I'll have identical pieces. And I need 6 of these also. This has been a long day of cutting, I have to be honest. Ugh. I just marked and finished up H and A. Next step. Okay, so I cut on the end of these two pieces, and they're both facing up, so they'll be identical. I cut this angle, matching the little diamonds, on template K. Okay? Then she said take this long edge, this bottom edge right here, and measure down and mark it at the 33 3/8 inches mark. Okay? And I did that, I marked it, and then I cut it. So this piece is cut exactly right. What I almost made the mistake, I cut both of these edges the same. And then notice she said take this piece, turn it over to match this piece, and then cut it, and they'll all be the same. Well, thank goodness I didn't make that second cut, because I did make the first cut, but luckily, I have enough left over, barely, to cut that edge. So, she wants 2 of one way and 2 of mirror imaging. So thank goodness I watched her video again, and it got through to me. I understood. Put it upside down on top of the others, so it's a mirror image. And I want to make sure I'm as accurate as I can be. I already lined up the diamonds, so I know that I'm in this. I have mirror images, and I have just enough to cut it out correctly. Thank goodness I listened to her. So, because this is upside down, and I'm cutting it on top of the other ones, but what that does, being upside down, it makes a mirror image. So now let me line up these ends really good. And put my ruler here and trim it. Whew, thank goodness I watched that, because I'll show you. So you've got two that go this way and two that go the opposite. See how they're mirror image? If you flip them over, they're the same. If you put them here, and it's like you're looking in a mirror. So now I'm going to take these, and these are K and KR. I'll put tape on them, and then I'm all done cutting out for today. And I couldn't have finished any sooner. And I'm glad that now I can go sit this evening and sew. So I'll do a part 2 video where I show you how I sew. And that way, now this is K and KR. And the R stands for reverse. So now I've got all the pieces I'm going to use. This is important. Here is the bag of things I'm going to be stitching and working on. Put that in there. You know what I didn't do? I didn't mark. So I'll put the template in there so I can mark it when I get upstairs. I'll put my sewing directions so they'll be ready. Put that in my bag. And clean up my space so that tomorrow when I'm ready to do my next project, I will be ready. Alright, so then I will put my instruction pages in here. That's the cutting pages. And put my scraps in my scrap baggie, because I saved them all. You just never know what you're going to need. Alright. Alright. I close up my rotary cutter. Get ready to take that upstairs. So, that's it for month 4 of the Jinny Beyer Stellaris. Thank you for hanging around with me while I figured this one out. This one really got me thinking, and I had to take my time and do it one step at a time. That's usually the best process for anything we do. Try not to get ahead of yourself and take it one step at a time, and then you'll have it done too. So I'm going to take some dark thread upstairs with me when I go to sew this together, because the colors, I notice we're getting into the deep rich colors, and next month I have a feeling it's going to be a whirlwind with all this cutting done and so many components made. I think we're going to start assembling this Stellaris, and it should be amazing. Amazing. So thanks for hanging around with me, guys, and until the first Saturday in August, when the next Jinny Beyer instructions come out, good luck, and send me pictures of your work. I would love to put it on our site. So take care. Bye-bye.